Okay, so it's been very long. I've uploaded a YouTube video, so I figure I'll just make this quick, unscripted one just to put some content out there. Now, this video is not going to be well researched. It's not going to have that many sources, if it has sources at all. I just want to give my opinion on this issue. I understand that in American society it's a very taboo issue to talk about, but I figured that no topic is, truly unspeakable. That while we can't say whatever we want in the internet, we can definitely discuss whatever we want on the internet. So today's topic is going to be on race and IQ. The reason I want to talk about this is because this is one of the biggest talking points in the alt-right. A little bit with, the far left SJWs, but when we talk about the alt-right and white nationalism, definitely this is going to be the biggest topic among the Jewish question. So what does the alt-right view when it comes on race and IQ? If I make a straw man of the alt-right, or if I don't present the alt-right correctly, please then let me know in the comment section below. But this is what I see on the alt-right. So basically, the traditional view on the alt-right of race and IQ is that there are different races, and these races are based on physical characteristics of people. And based on these physical characteristics on people, we can decide which race is, more different than each other. It doesn't mean that they're superior, it doesn't mean that they're inferior. It just means that because they're very different, they're incompatible. I assume that this is what they're trying to say. Because I don't believe that everyone in the alt-right is racist, but I think that their views could potentially lead to that. Now, I disagree with the alt-right. I agree on them that there are physical characteristics among races. I just don't think that they're important enough to decide whether we should have an ethno-state. So, for example, a lot of people in the alt-right like to discuss IQ differences among different people. The average IQ for white people in the world is around 100, whereas the average IQ around for black people in Africa is like 70. And by American standards, a 70 is borderline retarded or borderline intellectually disabled. So many people in the alt-right say that the reason why the IQ of sub-Saharan Africans are so low is because of, genetics. That these people are just predetermined to have really low intelligence. And this is why there's a lot of crime in African countries, and even why there's a lot of crime in America amongst the black community. And while I agree that these facts are indisputable, they're facts. It's clear that on average blacks do have a very low IQ. I don't think it's because of genetics or because of biology. Mainly because if we look at, let's say immigrants from Nigerian Americans, on average Nigerian Americans make more than the average Anglo or white American. And if the alt-right is true that Africans are predetermined to have a low intelligence, then why do Nigerian Americans make more than white Americans? I find this fact funny, as this could be used against the alt-right and against SJWs as well. On one side, people think that the reason black people aren't as successful as white people is because, black people, just biologically speaking, are unable to become successful as white people. And the other side says that the reason why black people aren't as successful as white people is because there are institutional barriers that keep them from succeeding. I find both views are stupid. Yeah, so the reason why black people aren't as successful as white people or other races, in my opinion, is because of culture. And one of my evidence for this is, of course, what I just said earlier, that Nigerian Americans make more in income than white Americans. And this is because many, of course, immigrants, when they come to this country, they want what's best for their children, right? So they work hard, they try what's best for them, and we see this along with other people from other countries as well. We can see this with Filipinos, we can see this with Chinese, Koreans, Vietnamese, many people from across the world, that despite the fact that a lot of these countries are poor, because these people really want to make a better life for their children. However, we still have many other groups, like for example, Haitian Americans and Latino Americans, right, that make really low incomes compared to the average white Americans. And I'd say to this again, it's because of culture. Maybe these people don't really truly appreciate what it is to live in these countries, and don't always take they don't always take advantages of their opportunities, right? For example, I live in a Latino community, and I know for a fact that there are plenty of Latinos that haven't bothered to learn English. One of them is because Miami is a very, it's basically the most of the people here in Miami speak Spanish, so why would you need to learn English, right? But despite all this, it makes more sense to learn English because you're gonna run across a person that only speaks English eventually. It happens. Miami is Miami, but it's still America, right? So I'd say they have this sort of this part has to go with their culture, with not valuing education, as much as other things. Whereas Chinese, on the other hand, I see a lot of Chinese know how to speak English. You go to a Chinese restaurant, they speak English. You meet a Chinese student out of college, most likely gonna speak English. And learning a new language is hard, I understand that, but with effort, you can eventually master it. Now, what does this have to do with the whole race and IQ thing that I was talking about earlier? Is the fact that a lot of people in the alt-right say that people are just genetically, because of their genetics, they're just unable to succeed as much as other people. And I just don't think that's true, because clearly environment has a huge impact as who we are. And another issue with the alt-right's view on race and IQ is that is just by talking about it, I feel that this could just easily change people's perception on race, right? Even if you don't agree with their talking points, it can have a big effect on you. For example, the YouTuber MIki Buddha has once stated that, because he's been doing so much research on the alt-right and race realism, every time he sees a person that's a minority or a different race, they have a sort of negative thoughts about them. It doesn't mean that MIki Buddha is a bigot by any means, but he does have those sort of thoughts running across him because he's been doing all this research that much. And I think that's a lot of the fear of a lot of people, that this could warp their mind to think that, if I see a black person, I automatically think that they're gonna, have a low IQ and stuff like that. A concern of a lot of people, as how long as people believe in individuality and not judging people based on a statistic or something like that, we're not going to become bigots.
Because in many ways, the mind that I occupy is alt-right, but I don't want to be. I'm disgusted with the person I've become. The alt-right, or the way I am when living through the lens of its ideology, disgusting. I only see differences in groups now. The similarities among people is lost on me. When I go to the market and see a black man behind the counter, my mind thinks of IQ statistics, or white displacement, or crime statistics, everything that separates this person from me. When I hear the word immigrant, my mind shudders with antipathy. I'm annoyed by the very notion of them, but I don't want to be. I want to be the kinder, gentler person I used to be. I want to see them as human beings, as fellow neighbors of sentience. I want to focus on the qualities of one's character and not their race.
I know for a fact that the anti-SJW community have very negative views on Black Lives Matter, and they often talk about how black people commit the most crimes and stuff like that, but it doesn't change their view on black people as a whole. Why? Well, because they know that not all black people are criminals. Even if black people are committing the most crimes in the United States, that's still a minority of black people, and the reality is that most black people are just like any other people that want what's best for their families, right? I still think that we should treat people as individuals and not as a collective, right? Because people are people, not statistics. I know this sounds very cliche, but if races or if people in general want to improve, the best way is through education. Education doesn't have to be a 4-year college degree. It could be YouTube videos, it could be some good books, some great articles out there, but any form of education where it's to a traditional classroom or through research you've done on your own, it's important that we gather knowledge, because knowledge is power. I'm more than willing to have a conversation on this issue, and yes, I admit, the IQ results from Charles Murray are right. However, the conclusions often drawn for these results are, well, I guess you could say, kind of troubling, as many people use this as a justification for, oh, they're a subspecies of human, which there isn't. All it takes is a simple understanding of biology to understand that we're all Homo sapiens sapien. And I'm not being philosophical here, we literally are all Homo sapiens sapien. Even the tiny group of isolated Sentinelese people who have basically haven't evolved culturally for who knows how many thousands of years, they're still technically just as evolved, biologically speaking, as people in a civilized world. That's all for today. I'll try to make a more well-researched video on this topic some other time, but I just want to get my thoughts out there. So, until then.